the Trump administration on the Iranian economy.
Well, in our other headlines, at least 98 people. Thousands of others were left homeless after Sunday's 6.9 magnitude quake. The country's National Disaster Agency is saying that the number of those killed is likely to rise as the search for those trapped under the rubble continues. Saudi Arabia has expelled Canada's ambassador and frozen trade agreements. The Saudis accuse Canada of interference for urging the release of jailed rights activists. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are backing the Saudi position. Bangladesh's government says it's considering using the death penalty on those responsible for fatal traffic accidents. That's as students protest for a 9th day over the death of 2 teenagers killed by a speeding bus. Meanwhile, activists say armed groups linked to the government and the police have attacked the protesting students in Dhaka in an attempt to quash the demonstrations. And at least 11 people have been killed and 70 others injured in a spate of shootings in Chicago over the last 2 days. Police are blaming it mostly on gangs, saying that they use large summer crowds as cover to shoot indiscriminately. Gun violence in the US city has been in the spotlight lately, and President Donald Trump has criticized the city's Democratic mayor over the issue. Those are the headlines. I'll have more news in about 25 minutes' time after Counting the Cost, which starts now.
Hello, I'm Sami Zaidan. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, why Pakistan's new leader is facing some tough financial questions. Also this week, wildfires. We'll be taking a look at the economic and human cost of extreme heat events. Plus,
I'm Adrian Brown in the heart of China's soy country, where local farmers say they've got a lot to thank President Trump for. Find out why here on Al Jazeera.
fresh from elections, Pakistan is facing a financial squeeze. The economy is running low on foreign reserves. Now, Pakistan has had 14 IMF financing programs since 1980, and new loans are likely to come with strict conditions. Talk of a bailout is putting the country's economic relationship with China in focus. The $57 billion China-Pakistan economic corridor has led to massive imports from China. US officials are linking the Chinese super project to Pakistan's financial ills. They're demanding details on the terms of any Chinese loans. Islamabad is accusing the US of trying to sour Pakistan's financial relationship with Beijing. Kamal Haider reports from a market in Islamabad.
The outgoing government has already left a debt which is unsurpassed by any other government, almost doubling the country's debt to the foreign world. And of course that will entail many challenges for Imran Khan's government, which says that it wants to move on a policy which will make the country more sovereign. The people of Pakistan have voted for change. They have already seen the dollar spin out of control against the Pakistani rupee. And that of course will translate to hyperinflation. What they will be hoping for is the new government to come out with measures that will alleviate the suffering of the people and reduce inflation.
Joining us now from London is Gareth Leather, Senior Emerging Markets Economist at Capital Economics. Good to have you with us. First of all, how big a financial crisis is Pakistan facing?
It's facing a mounting one, and an increasingly serious one as well. Now, the backdrop to this is the big infrastructure projects that are currently going on in the country. Now, these began a couple of years ago, and in many ways, they're exactly what Pakistan needs. They're going to build bridges, railways, roads, energy plants, which is what basically Pakistan needs to get its economy back on track. The problem is that the money is coming from China. Nobody really knows who it's coming from. But it's left Pakistan with a lot of debt. It's also led to the emergence of a big current account deficit as well, a surge in imports of capital goods. needed for the construction phase of this project. And so they're increasingly facing quite an acute crisis. What they've been doing over the past few months is nothing really more than stopgap measures. So they've allowed the currency to weaken a little bit, they've raised interest rates, they've been spending their foreign exchange reserves, but it's increasingly got to the point that they need something a lot more drastic. And there's a lot of rumours now that they're going to be applying for an IMF loan over the next, probably the next couple of weeks even.
You mentioned the foreign currency reserves, and when those start dwindling, usually the clock starts ticking down, doesn't it? How much time does the new government have to deal with this?
So these foreign exchange reserves, they've fallen by about half over the past year or so, and are now the equivalent of around 2 months' worth of imports. So they've got a little bit of time, but the trajectory, the way things are going, is pretty clear. And without a sudden surge in exports, which seems very unlikely given the competitive problems that Pakistan has, it's really only got one solution, which is another loan. Now, they'd ideally get that from China or maybe somewhere in the Middle East, and there's rumours going around of a deal maybe in the offing. But that's going to be nothing more than just a stopgap. What they need is more dramatic measures, which I think the IMF will ask them to provide.
Well, talking precisely about those dramatic measures, because money usually comes with strings attached, will that mean that Imran Khan will have to backtrack on some of those campaign pledges?
Exactly. So the IMF is going to be quite tough, I suspect, on a number of areas. First, it's going to demand a lot more transparency on these Chinese investment projects, that at the moment nobody really knows where the money's coming from, nobody knows who's going to pay for it, nobody knows who's getting what. So they're going to want a lot more transparency there. Now that's going to upset the Chinese, who like the idea of the fact that nobody knows exactly how much they're making from these projects. They're also going to demand a significant tightening of fiscal policy, which means that Imran Khan, who was elected on these pledges to kind of create an Islamic welfare state in Pakistan, is going to basically have to do the opposite. He's going to have to cut spending rather than increase it. Now, that's going to be quite unpopular. I think the one thing he's got going for him is that he's still obviously very early on in his term in office, so he can at least blame the opposition. But straight away, he's going to have some tough choices to make.
Gareth Leather there from Capital Economics. Thanks.
Thank you.
Still to come on Counting the Cost, opponents are calling it the poison package. A bill to lift restrictions on pesticides is being voted on in one of the world's biggest food exporters. But first, the soybean market is going bananas. In retaliation to US tariffs, China has slapped a 25% levy on US soybeans. While the USA is the biggest grower, China the top buyer. The beans are a key part of the global food chain and used in animal feed. China is also trying to shift its supply chain to Latin America and boost domestic production. Our China correspondent, Adrian Brown, has this report from the northeast of the country.
Farmland is precious in China. Only 15% of the country is arable. That makes the lush and fertile province of Heilongjiang very important, especially now. Close to the border with Russia, this is soybean country. China is the world's largest consumer of soybeans, but it can't grow enough, and so is reliant on imports to meet demand. That means the decision to impose a 25% levy on US soybeans creates risk. Yet, in this province, the trade fight appears to be having a welcome impact. Farmers like Mun Fanling are being urged by the local government to switch their fields to soy from corn, offering subsidies as an incentive. That'll raise incomes. Mun says he has a lot to thank President Trump for.
When China stops importing from the United States, it's possible the price of domestic soybeans will go up, and that means we will make more money.
Soybeans may flourish in this province, but only around 10% of those consumed in China are domestically grown. The instruction to local farmers to grow more soybeans was a political priority. But the reality is this: China is a long way from ever being self-sufficient in soybeans, which means it's going to be reliant on imports for years to come.
Hi everybody, I am soybean.
In this cartoon video, China appears to be targeting US farmers. It's been airing on the international service of state TV and has a clear message: China can buy soybeans from other countries.
If that happens, soybean farmers in the US could take an even greater hit.
The soybean plays an essential role in the Chinese diet, used in cooking oil, sauce, tofu, as well as animal feed. The government's now taking action to ensure there's no shortage.
The government is offering more subsidies to soybean farmers, so I believe the government has been very supportive to the whole soybean industry.
In the past, cheap soybean imports hurt Chinese growers, but the tariff war with the United States could secure their future.
This week, China's Huawei overtook Apple as the world's #2 seller of smartphones. The market leader is Samsung, but Apple is still a hugely profitable business. This week, it joined a very exclusive club. On Thursday, following a spike in its shares, its total stock market valuation hit $1 trillion, helping it hit that milestone better than expected quarterly revenue. But the global market for smartphones is slowing, according to the International Data Corporation. Higher selling prices and market saturation are among factors weighing on growth. Apple's next move is to take on Netflix in video streaming. It's already hiring the talent to make original shows. Social media giant Facebook says it's deleted fake accounts attempting to influence the US midterm elections. Almost 300,000 people followed the suspended pages. Alan Fisher reports from Washington, D.C.
The founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, went to Capitol Hill in April to admit his company hadn't done enough to stop foreign groups trying to influence the 2016 US presidential election.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry.
Now, as part of its continuing investigation into election interference, it discovered it's happening again. And so it has suspended 32 pages on that platform and Instagram, which it also owns.
They are going to be in a hair trigger alert for the foreseeable future. So any instances that crop up like this, they're likely to take action and then be public about that action.
The company uses artificial intelligence and human investigators to flag up automated accounts. They normally deal with divisive social issues aimed at fanning conflict and upset. One page called Resistors created an event, a counter-protest to a Unite the Right rally, a white nationalist gathering in Washington, D.C. in August. It was found to be a fake group, and the page was disabled and the event deleted. It says it can't definitively tie the suspended accounts to Russia, but suggests it was possibly involved. American intelligence agencies have been warning for months Russia's efforts to undermine American democracy are active and are a threat to November's elections. At a cybersecurity summit in New York, the Homeland Security Secretary said the country is facing what she called a hurricane of threats.
Let me also again take this opportunity to issue a warning, as I have in other forums and speeches, to any foreign power that would consider meddling in our networks or in the affairs of our democracy. The United States will no longer tolerate or accept your interference. You will be exposed and you will pay a high price.
Facebook has been heavily criticized for not doing enough to stop outside interference in the 2016 election. It's determined that won't happen again, and it says it continues to work with the FBI to identify threats and remove them from its platforms.
Well, it's estimated that 97% of Iran is suffering from some form of drought. We sent Zain Basravi to Tehran to take a look at the reasons behind the shortage.
Every day a small group of Iranian farmers meet up at the edge of their town. Once wet fields of Isfahan, lush with crops, now barren land. By a dry canal, they beg for government help.
We're Iranian citizens too. We are Iranians who live in this part of the country. We just want to be heard. People are really tired. They can't make ends meet. They go to bed hungry.
Mustafa Ben Vidi lost an eye during fighting between police and protesting farmers in March. Acute water shortages are worsening problems, such as inflation and unemployment. And there are warning signs of rising anger.
More conflicts are expected to break out. An empty stomach doesn't have any religion. People are going to have to fight for every single drop of water, especially in dry regions like this that are hit hard by drought and climate change.
Environmental experts say weather is a small part of the problem. They blame years of government mismanagement for the man-made water crisis. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the government's rush to develop industries meant skipping environmental impact assessments before building dams and piping water around the country. One solution has been to try using less water for things like these. But most of Iran's water is used on farms, where old ways of watering crops means waste on an industrial scale. Environmental experts also say the government needs to take the problem more seriously.
First, we need to revise some laws and adopt a procedure for the stable development and management of water resources, so we can better preserve water and control usage, so we can be hopeful to have better conditions in the next 1 or 2 decades.
Even by summer standards, these riverbeds in the north of the capital Tehran are drier than usual. That's being felt downstream, where they feed ancient underground springs.
From up here, you can really get a sense of the impact of the country's water shortage on public facilities. In just 20 years, a single generation, what was once a sizable body of water, has been reduced to little more than a wading pool.
People who live here say they had to plug part of the pool to collect enough water for kids to play and escape the summer heat. Some of them are old enough to remember when the pool was full.
I remember my childhood. Me and my friends used to bike here and swim. Now it's 50 square meters. Back then it was about 5,000. It was deep and considered dangerous for swimming.
For now, it's enough for these kids to cool off and have some fun, unconcerned perhaps that when they have children of their own, the little water they have left probably won't be here.
Now, from water shortages to wildfires, the past 12 months have raised global awareness about the economic and human cost of extreme heat events. We've seen wildfires in places unprepared for such outbreaks due to unusually hot weather. Drought and blistering heat have been turning forests into tinderboxes in places that were previously fire-free. You need a number of ingredients for wildfires in particular, and climate change is one of them. Let's tally events so far this year. Sweden has experienced 65 fires already this year, up from an annual average of 3 fires over the past decade. Blazes are now happening as far north as the Arctic Circle. That's according to Copernicus, the European Union's Earth observation program. At least 91 people died last month in the worst wildfire to hit Greece in decades. Fire raced through a seaside area northeast of Athens. And in the US, the annual average number of large fires has doubled since the 1970s, putting lives and livelihoods at risk. Gabriel Elizondo has more from the destroyed town of Keswick.
The entire community of Keswick, California, has been turned to ash. Nothing remains. A once lively little town of about 700 people now resembles something like a faraway planet from a science fiction movie. The fire that roared through here was described as a tornado of flames. There was nothing firefighters could do to stop it.
The way that fire front was coming through, it was going to do what it wanted to do. We might be able to save one little spot here, but the risk would have been just immense to try and even be anywhere near there.
What remains are the remnants of people's lives. There are small signs of life here, like the burnt pages of this children's book. It's silent. There isn't a sound. There is still a mandatory evacuation zone. Residents aren't being allowed back. Only the occasional emergency vehicle passes by. Ironically, the only color remaining in town, a red fire hydrant that was no match for the flames.
It's the middle of the day, but the sun can barely be seen because it's so gray and dark here. The sun can barely peek out through the thick layer of smoke and ash that covers the air, not only here, but in this entire region of California. Doctors say people that inhale this smoke now face health risks.
By all accounts, everyone here was able to flee just before the fire overtook them. The residents are mostly low income. The future of the historic town is now in doubt.
I don't know if they'll have the resources to rebuild. Hopefully those who have insurance have the opportunity, but those who don't, it's a low-income type of area, so I'm not sure that a lot of people will be able to rebuild.
If they decide to rebuild, it will be a new town, because the old one simply no longer exists.
Well, joining us now from London is Sam Fankhauser. Sam is the director of the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. Good to have you with us. So first of all, how unusual are the extreme heat events we've been witnessing this year?
Well, at the moment, these events still feel slightly unusual. We sort of talk about record temperatures, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere. But if we start looking forward and factor in climate change, this will become the new normal. There are predictions that the kind of heat we have this year, we might experience every other year from about 2040 onwards.
That's quite scary. You mentioned climate change there. How is it linked to climate change? Break it down for us.
Well, there's quite a clear link between the probability of having a heat wave and climate change. The climate or the weather sort of fluctuates, but you add a stock of temperature on top of that fluctuation, and we're about 1 degree warmer now on global average than we were in pre-industrial times, 100, 200 years ago. And that means that we can statistically start to show that the probability of certain events increases because of climate change. What we're currently seeing in Northern Europe, preliminary estimates tell us, is about 2 times as likely than it would have been if there wasn't man-made global warming.
What sort of heat events should we expect to occur every other year going forward? More of the same or something even more a little intense?
It could probably even become more intense, and we shouldn't just talk about only heat and temperature. Climate change changes a lot of variables that can be dangerous to us. We will see more drought events, and that can be really, really disruptive. We can look at Southern Africa, the Cape region at the moment, where water is in very, very short supply, and that causes huge disruption and damage. We might have too much water in other instances, extreme downpours, flooding events, hurricanes, typhoons. We've seen examples of that in the US a year ago with hurricanes like Maria and Harvey. We see it in Japan at the moment. Again, there are very high damages associated with too much water, as much as damage from not enough water. So then, of course, you have the heat waves.
So just listening to you speak there, one assumes this will be very disruptive to current patterns of economic activity, right?
It will be very disruptive. We can adapt to certain things. We can change our agricultural practices. We can plant different crops. We can air condition our houses. So there's a lot of things we can do, but it will ultimately be very disruptive. We will have to change our infrastructure, the way we do things. Infrastructure is very long-lived. Buildings, cities, trains, power stations, they live for 20, 30, 40 years. If you have to redesign and retrofit climate change adaptation onto those structures, that will be very disruptive and very expensive. It will be worth doing because we have a different climate, but it will be very, very expensive.
It's been fascinating talking to you. Thanks so much, Sam.
My pleasure.
And finally, a Brazilian government commission has recommended easing restrictions on the use of pesticides. It says the move would help aid the agricultural industry. But families in rural areas say pesticides are already contaminating air, food and water, causing death and disease. Daniel Schweimler reports.
The residents of Limoeiro do Norte in northeastern Brazil live by agriculture, but many of them are also killed by it. These widows and their families have been fighting for years for compensation, for recognition, they say, that their husbands died from diseases contracted while spraying pesticides with inadequate protection. Dona Maria's husband, José, died 12 years ago.
He asked me not to give up, that I should keep fighting for justice. That was his last request.
Brazil uses 20% of the pesticides produced for world markets. It's difficult to avoid, seeping into this local reservoir from neighbouring soya fields.
It may look idyllic, but extensive fumigation has poisoned this air that I'm breathing, the water that the people here drink, and the food that they grow. A way of life poisoned by the big agricultural companies' quest for short-term profit.
4 of the 10 pesticides most commonly used in Brazil are banned in Europe. University of Ceará studies found cancer rates here 40% higher than the national average.
We get worried hearing that so many people are ill, but what can I do? I need to keep working to pay my bills.
But cancer is not the only problem. Antonia's daughter, Manuela, suffers a congenital disease which doctors believe was caused by pesticides.
Even if we plant vegetables or fruits in our yard, we can't be sure that air or water aren't contaminated. According to the studies, it seems everything is contaminated here.
Many others here, including Marcia's daughter Sofia, suffer similar diseases.
When doctors from Ceará University did research here, they identified a chemical substance in my daughter's blood that was banned in the 1990s.
However, a government commission is recommending a relaxation of the existing regulations to allow the powerful agribusiness industry to spray more.
This is one of the best proposals for Brazilian society. We want to make sure the farmers provide the best food for the population. This bill is for food safety.
Campaigners say laws are flouted and monitoring is poor.
What they are trying to do is to remove or limit the authority of health and environmental authorities in the process of registering new pesticides. And we think that's very dangerous, that we don't think that this means to modernize the system, and it would take Brazil way back.
Justice here moves slowly, bogged down in bureaucracy, but the fight to be heard for a response from the powerful agribusinesses and a distant government goes on.
And that's our show for this week, but remember you can get in touch with us via Twitter. Use the hashtag AJCTC when you do, or drop us an email. countingthecost@aljazeera.net is our address. There's more for you online at aljazeera.com/CTC. That'll take you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links, and entire episodes for you to catch up on. That's it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Sami Zaidan from the whole team here. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.
Full of struggles.
La lastimadura vino después de otra obra que hicimos. Sí, me deprimí mucho.
Full of pleasure.
Mi Cuba es mi casa, mi Cuba es mi familia, mi Cuba son mis amistades.
An intimate look at life in Cuba today.
Tengo ropa en tantos lugares que no sé, pero soy muy pequeña, entonces casi toda la ropa la tenemos en maleta.
My Cuba on Al Jazeera.
Discover the world of Al Jazeera. The best films from across our network of channels.
So the line is here. I am allowed to be here, but I'm not allowed to be here.
Fresh perspectives and new insights to challenge and change the way we look at the world.
This is not acceptable. This is not new.
Al Jazeera World. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Iran braces for the return of US sanctions. President Hassan Rouhani is due to outline plans for tackling them. Hello, I'm Mariam Namazi. This is Al Jazeera live from London. Also coming up. Rescuers scramble to find survivors after Sunday's deadly earthquake in Indonesia. 98 people are confirmed dead. Dire warnings of disease, flooding and landslides at Bangladesh's overcrowded refugee camps unless conditions are improved for the Rohingya Muslims living there. And we report on an initiative to turn the tide on London's plastic problem by bringing back water fountains. Iran is bracing for the first round of US sanctions to come into force following Donald Trump's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal. But the timing couldn't be worse. Tehran is struggling to deal with a faltering economy. The rial has lost half of its value since April. Inflation is high, unemployment is getting worse, and sporadic protests have been reported across the country. And this is just the first round of sanctions. Access to US banknotes will be blocked. Cars, carpets, and foodstuffs will no longer be imported into the US. Iran will be blocked from buying and selling gold, precious metals, steel, aluminium, and coal. And no more commercial planes. Boeing scrambled to deliver an order for new planes before Monday's deadline. Round 2 of sanctions is due in November. Now, those sanctions will block Iran's oil sales and are expected to do even more damage. Well, Zain Basravi joins us live now from Tehran. Already a number of challenges facing the Iranian economy. How much concern is there over the reimposition of these US sanctions?
Well, what many Iranians, regular working civilians as well as government officials will tell you is that this date, going into August 6th, and the re-implementation of snapback sanctions, this is just a matter of bureaucracy, it's just symbolic, and that sanctions have already been in place in spirit, if not in name. What many Iranians have complained about all the while is that even under the Obama administration, under President Barack Obama, who helped negotiate the 2015 nuclear deal, Iranians never really got the chance to fully realize the potential or the merits of the nuclear deal. They never really got to realize the benefits because either the implementation from the side of the signatories of the Western countries, they never really came all the way towards Iran in terms of allowing them to access benefits. And ever since Donald Trump, the current American president, was a candidate in the American elections, he's been carrying on a sort of psychological economic warfare to scare off any sort of foreign direct investment or any sort of travel to Iran or exports out of Iran. And so that's hit the economy hard already. So it's difficult for people to imagine how much worse it could actually get. We've seen the value of the currency drop drastically in less than a year. It's halved in value. And we're seeing oil companies that were here, conglomerates from Europe, multiple other places, leave the country and take their investments with them, as well as their foreign workforce. Now, what government officials here are hoping for is that European partners, the other signatories to this deal, sort of stand by their word and resist American sanctions, unilateral ones against Iran, as well as secondary sanctions, or the threat of secondary sanctions against people who deal with Iran.
And there has been a sense of unease in the country this year with random protests breaking out in cities across the country. What can we expect to hear then from President Rouhani when he speaks later?
Yes, of course, President Hassan Rouhani, the Iranian leader, is expected to speak this hour. And what his government has been trying to do is sort of win back some of the public faith of their people. This nuclear deal falling apart has made it an incredibly toxic policy in Iran and has made President Hassan Rouhani and his government very unpopular because they really painted it as the cure-all for the country's economic troubles. President Hassan Rouhani will be speaking soon. We're expecting him to mirror the tone that his foreign minister took earlier today, Mohammad Javad Zarif, speaking to journalists, said that President Trump could not be negotiated with, but that Iran was not alone, and that there were still 5 other signatories to the nuclear deal, and Iran would continue to work with them. Here's some of what he had to say.
No one believed that U.S. President Donald Trump was serious about dialogue and negotiations with Iran. All the threats and pressure had not succeeded in changing Iran's policies. Yes, the U.S. sanctions would cause some problems for Iran, but we would successfully overcome them.
Now, Javad Zarif, in this address to journalists, striking a very positive tone, saying that the stage of crisis in terms of American sanctions against Iran had already passed that by, and things were going to get better. And the fact is that many people in the country, for instance, the opposition protesters that have been taking to the streets to protest against the government's handling of the economy for the last 6 nights, they disagree with him. Opposition officials would also disagree with his assessment of the situation. What many people in Iran want to see is a change at the federal cabinet level, and that simply hasn't happened yet.
Thank you very much. With all the latest from Tehran, Zain Basravi. Well, Kimberly Halkett has more on the reaction that we've had today from Washington.
These sanctions put in place by the United States had been previously lifted under the 2015 JCPOA, or Iran nuclear agreement, put in place by the United States, Iran, and other world powers to limit Iran's nuclear program. The United States arguing, though, that since those sanctions were lifted, that Iran has enjoyed enormous profits, but that those profits have not filtered down to the Iranian people, citing the wave of anti-government protests, but instead the U.S. alleges that Iran has been using that money to finance proxy militias and destabilize the broader Middle East. As a result, the U.S. putting in place a wide range of sanctions that will begin on Tuesday morning and will also take effect in a second wave in November. The first wave targeting and limiting the purchase of automobiles, commercial aircraft, limiting trade in gold, graphite, steel, and aluminum, even limiting the trade of carpets and food. But it will be the crippling sanctions that will come in November that will have the most devastating effect. That is, in fact, when the United States will target Iran's oil industry.
Rescuers on the Indonesian island of Lombok are still trying to assess the extent of the damage from Sunday's powerful earthquake, the second to strike there in a week. At least 98 people are known to have died, and as Step Vassen reports from Lombok, many more might be trapped in the wreckage of their homes.
From under the rubble of a mosque, women's voices could still be heard 3 hours after the earthquake struck. The disaster happened during prayers when the mosque was full. Neighbors heard women screaming, but had no equipment to rescue them. When rescue workers arrived 20 hours later, the screaming had stopped.
I'm sure people are still trapped here. Some of them we managed to pull out, but they died a few hours later.
Islanders on Lombok were still recovering from last week's powerful quake, when the even bigger tremor happened. Many were too late to make it to safety, as buildings collapsed around them. The Mataram hospital was also severely damaged, so the injured had to be treated outdoors. Zulkarnain was going to pray when the mosque gate collapsed on top of him.
What we need is tents. We have received some help from the government, but we need more tents to be able to treat our patients.
It's peak tourist season and nearly 3,000 visitors were evacuated from the Gili Islands near Lombok. Tourists panicked on the 3 small, flat islands when a tsunami warning was issued. Some were injured trying to reach safety, including a Spanish tourist who fell from a tree. Most tourists want to leave as soon as possible.
We decided to leave the island, but I don't really know whether, no one was saying whether that was what you should do or not, so yeah. Did that, and I just want to get away from Lombok and get out of Indonesia, really.
The tsunami warning was quickly lifted, but the quake damage will take a lot longer to repair.
In just a few minutes, this 2-story mosque collapsed into rubble. People in Lombok remain in shock after the second earthquake in a week left many homeless. While help is on the way, search and rescue workers are struggling with the extent of the damage.
Heavy equipment needed to rescue or recover trapped worshippers has yet to arrive at the mosque. Some say they've heard weak cries from under the rubble, but it may be too late. Step Vassen, Al Jazeera, Tanjung, Lombok.
Now, Saudi Arabia has ordered Canada's ambassador out of the country in a row over human rights. It's also frozen all new trade, investment and educational agreements. The Saudis accuse the Canadian government of interference for urging the release of jailed rights activists. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are backing the Saudi position. Paul Chadojian reports.
Canada's ambassador to Saudi Arabia is on his way home. The Saudis say Dennis Horak is no longer welcome. and they're accusing the Canadian government of interfering in the kingdom's internal affairs as well as spreading misinformation.
The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs has expressed disbelief by this negative, unfounded comment, which was not based on any accurate or true information.
The diplomatic dispute was triggered by the Canadian embassy in Riyadh tweeting its concern about the arrest of civil society and women's rights activists, including Samar Badawi. The tweets urged the Saudi authorities to release them.
Women's suffrage.
Political activist Samar Badawi was honored in 2012 by then U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and First Lady Michelle Obama. Badawi was jailed after suing the kingdom for the right to choose her own husband.
Freedom of expression
is a human right.
Her brother Raif Badawi was sentenced to 10 years and 1,000 lashes in 2014 for insulting Islam through a blogging website for public debate. Others arrested by Saudi police have pressed for the rights of women and the rights of Shia Muslim minority. Another woman was taken into custody because she's married to an Islamic law scholar.
It's absolutely ridiculous. The Saudi authorities can, on the one hand, come through with some limited reforms, like the lifting of the driving ban, but on the other hand, arrest the very same women who helped to bring about this reform. Since May, we've seen more than a dozen women's rights activists arrested in what is an unprecedented crackdown.
The kingdom has just allowed women to drive for the first time and to attend sporting events, and cinemas have opened after being banned. Saudi Arabia is a major trading partner, supplying 10% of Canadian crude oil imports. Canada listed Saudi Arabia as the second largest buyer of Canadian arms after the U.S. The two countries signed a $12 billion arms deal 4 years ago.
Canada was to deliver important trucks and other armored vehicles. And also, Saudi Arabia is a source of revenue for a number of Canadian universities. Since thousands of Saudis are coming to the Canadian universities for their education.
Critics say Canada's allies must help in taking a stand to pressure the kingdom to stop its crackdown on activists calling for change. Paul Chadurjian, Al Jazeera.
Still ahead for you on the programme. Bangladesh's government is pressured to get tougher on transport as protests in the capital enter their 9th day. And we meet the man who moved from Mexico's ganglands to the halls of Congress as the president tries a new strategy to tackle organized crime.
Hello again. It's time to take a look at weather conditions across Levant and western parts of Asia. A generally fine picture, though we still have the risk of some showers on the southern side of the Caspian Sea. Also some showers between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, across the Caucasus, and eastern side of the Mediterranean, generally looking dry and fine. Fine day in Beirut, there, temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius. So you can see the showers around the Black Sea still persisting as we head on through into Wednesday. Meanwhile, further south, patchy cloud across the Arabian Peninsula, but generally fine temperatures in the low 40s for the most part. Here in Doha, we're looking at a high of 43 degrees. Again, 3 degrees. Again, enough breeze to keep the humidity values relatively low. Heading into Wednesday, not a great deal of change expected. Salalah, somewhat cooler, highs of 27 and patchy low cloud. Cross into southern parts of Africa. A largely fine picture, chance of a few showers for Cape Town, fairly brisk winds here, but otherwise it's a largely fine picture to head on through into Wednesday. Wind took in Namibia there, sunshine and highs of 28. For central parts of Africa, still got showers quite a long way north across parts of Sudan, Chad, Niger, and then further towards the west, also looking quite showery. Bamako, Mali could be quite wet during the course of Tuesday, but it should be dry in Accra and Ghana, and also in Lagos, Nigeria.
A new village committee has been elected and is grappling with the arduous task of sustaining a community. But residents of this Chinese village have grown impatient and have one concern in sight: the reclamation of their land. Democracy is complicated. Part 2 of a 6-part series filmed over 5 years. Wukan, China's democracy experiment, on Al Jazeera.
DNS. DNS.
Welcome back. A quick reminder of the top stories now. US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order reimposing a range of sanctions on Iran. The measures follow Trump's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear pact. At least 98 people are known to have died and thousands have been left homeless after Sunday's earthquake on the Indonesian island of Lombok. The search for survivors is continuing. And Saudi Arabia has expelled Canada's ambassador and frozen trade agreements. The Saudis accused Canada of interference for urging the release of jailed rights activists. Well, now Bangladesh's government is considering using the death penalty for fatal traffic accidents as students protest for a 9th day over the deaths of 2 teenagers who were killed by a speeding bus. Groups armed with wooden batons have attacked students at East-West University in Dhaka. Activists say the groups are linked to the government and police in an attempt to crack down on the protests. A security law has been imposed so police can arrest people in a group of more than 4. Well, the Committee to Protect Journalists is calling for the release of anyone who's being held because of their coverage of the protests. Photographer and journalist Shahidul Alam was detained soon after this interview on Al Jazeera on Sunday. At least 5 journalists were attacked during the protests. Now, at least 2 people have been killed and dozens of others injured after 2 trucks collided on a motorway in the northern Italian city of Bologna. The crash near the airport sent a huge ball of fire and billows of black smoke into the air and caused a bridge along the motorway to collapse. One of the trucks is believed to have been carrying flammable material. Firefighters are battling the flames and roads around the area have been closed off. More than 1,000 firefighters are tackling a major wildfire in southern Portugal. The fire broke out on Saturday in the southern Algarve region, an area that's popular with tourists. Firefighters are also battling a fire near Portugal's border with Spain. Record high temperatures and high winds have made it more difficult to get the fires under control. Now, government leaders in northern Iraq say ISIL sleeper cells remain a threat, but they insist that a recent attack there is not a sign of the group's revival. The attack on the Kurdistan Regional Government headquarters 2 weeks ago resulted in the deaths of 3 gunmen and a hostage. Natasha Ghanaian reports from Erbil.
Ahmed Salim isn't used to his 5 children seeing him in such a helpless state. The police officer was protector and sole provider for his family until 2 weeks ago. He was guarding the Erbil Governorate building, the headquarters of the Kurdistan Regional Government.
It was 7:22 a.m. They were kids wearing flip-flops. I didn't think they would do anything. All I remember is bang.
3 men armed with guns and grenades shot Salim and rushed inside. They took 3 hostages and killed 1 before being shot dead after a 4-hour firefight with security forces. Unable to move his neck, arm, and leg, Salim must be fed, dressed, and carried.
It's up to God. I have to do physical therapy. I hope I can recover soon.
A security forces chief says ISIL is responsible. Their target was the governor of Erbil, and to kill as many people as possible in the typically busy municipal building.
ISIL is in the towns of Kirkuk and Mahmud. These are the places for sleeper cells now, and where they have regrouped.
The Security Council of the Kurdistan region says this recent attack is not a sign of an ISIL revival. Rather, it's part of a pattern of intermittent attacks. There have been 5 in the last 11 years. Nawzad Hadi became governor shortly after his predecessor was killed, along with 11 others, in what was described as a terrorist attack 14 years ago. He says despite multiple attempts on his life, he doesn't think ISIL will gain momentum in Kurdistan.
There's a good, let me say, an agreement among the community, from the religious side, from our government, that we have to reject these ideas.
Ahmed Salim is dedicated to resuming his career. He's been a policeman for almost half his life. For now, he knows he needs to concentrate on his recovery, one finger and toe movement at a time. Natasha Ganaid, Al Jazeera, Erbil.
Well, some news from Egypt where 13 people have been injured in an explosion in the capital, Cairo. The blast happened after a car and a minibus collided. It's believed an electrical fault in one of the vehicles spread to the fuel tank, and that caused the explosion. The Bangladeshi government is being urged to quickly improve conditions for Rohingya Muslims in what's becoming the world's biggest refugee camp. Human Rights Watch is warning of disease, violence, flooding and landslides in massively overcrowded camps in Cox's Bazar. Around 750,000 Rohingya are in temporary shelters there after escaping Myanmar and last year's military offensive against them. Well, Bril Farag is the director of the Refugee Rights Division at Human Rights Watch. He says pressure must continue to force Myanmar to implement reforms and give rights to the Rohingya.
There is a real risk of people dying in landslides. There's a real risk of a cyclone event and simply the monsoon rains themselves on the topography that we're talking about, these steep inclines, people that I've spoken to living in huts that their neighbors have already washed away, and they're sitting there right on the precipice. People do need to be evacuated. They need to be brought, even within the mega camp itself, to safer locations. And they're working on it. There's actually, valiant efforts to try to shore up the conditions in the camp. But the Bangladesh authorities have insisted that the camp is temporary and that the solution is repatriation to Myanmar. While we agree in principle, and the refugees themselves also on the right of return, the immediate concern is preventing people from suffering and preventing loss of life here and now. Let's worry about repatriation as time goes on, putting pressure on Myanmar to fundamentally reform, to allow refugees to go home. But in the meantime, even though it may have the look of permanency to build proper schools and have proper education, children shouldn't be left with no education, and essentially that's what's happening now. And the flimsy dwellings that they're living in that can be washed away by high winds and storms need to be shored up as well. They need hard, sheltered areas that can protect them in cyclones as well.
Brazil has launched a national vaccination campaign against measles. Authorities have started administering the vaccines in clinics across the country. They say indigenous Brazilians living close to the border with Venezuela are at a greater risk of being affected by the virus. The country's health ministry says more than 1,000 people have been infected and 5 killed in a recent outbreak. Now, Mexico's new president-elect has promised a different way of dealing with organized crime. Andrés Manuel López Obrador believes pulling people out of poverty will help curb the country's epidemic of violence. A former gang member who's now becoming a state congressman is an example of how the plan could work. John Holman went to San Luis to meet him.
The new local congressman from San Luis, Mexico, out to meet his constituents. He's unlike any politician they've seen before, a Chavobanda street kid, just like them, made good. For some, Pedro Carrizales, nicknamed El Mijis, is a blueprint for the incoming government on how they can rescue young people drawn to crime. His body's a patchwork of tattoos and knife cuts, product of a life of violence and drug addiction, until he hit bottom.
My mother was sick with kidney failure. They called me, and I was drinking with my crew, thinking, tomorrow she'll be okay. And she died, and I didn't get to say goodbye. And to kill the pain, I jumped in front of cars. I tried to hang myself from a tree in my garden. I was taking cocaine all the time. I was 24 years old.
That was the turning point. He sought help, a Christian mentor who gave him his first job. He in turn says he gained a faith and a mission to help San Luis's young and marginalized.
I realized there aren't public policies for the young, and that there are lots of them, like me, who didn't get to choose where they live. Children with dreams stopped, just like me. I wanted to be an actor, so I started to campaign for a space for them, and to try and reduce the fights between gangs.
He formed an association and organised football tournaments, dances, work programmes. Hundreds of gang members turned up. He used it to broker peace deals between them.
I see him as an example to follow, that you can come from the barrio and still manage to become someone.
Now he's heading to the local Congress. Not everyone's pleased. Many criticise his criminal past and doubt his reform. He says he's received threats, but he says he can't let down those in the city's gangs now. His approach chimes with incoming President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's nationwide plans. Violence in Mexico is at record levels, and the incoming administration says the strategy has to change. Rather than just confronting those drawn to organised crime, they say that young people need to be offered other options. Controversially, that includes an amnesty for some low-level gang members. El Mijis supports that, and so far his base seems to follow him. But they have a warning.
Just don't lose sight of who you are. Remember, it's better to be remembered as a good person than to have a street named after you.
That's the test for El Mijis and the rest of the incoming government. Will they bring the social change they promise, or succumb to their newfound political power? John Holman, Al Jazeera, San Luis Potosí.
People in Europe are being told to stay hydrated as a record-breaking heat wave sweeps across the continent. Here in London, many residents are buying bottles of water to keep cool. That's also led to a surge in plastic waste. Mayor Sadiq Khan now wants to turn the tide on the British capital's plastic problem by bringing back water fountains. Catherine Stansel explains.
London may have been the city that pioneered the public drinking fountain, but its popularity has dried up since this one was built in 1859. Only a handful of water fountains exist in the capital today as more people reach for bottled water to quench their thirst. Now, with the growing threat of plastic to the environment, London wants to bring a new generation of water fountain to the British public. Earlier this year, Mayor Sadiq Khan announced a pilot scheme of 20 water stations to be built. It's part of a nearly $1 million project to reduce plastic waste in London over the next 3 years. They're being installed in shopping districts and commuter hubs, and if they prove successful, the project may expand.
The scope for expanding the extent of availability of water for Londoners is huge. We need to make sure that people have access to water and that they're not having to pay for it. But the other benefit that would come would actually be in reducing congestion. If you move water in pipes, then rather than in plastic bottles that have to be transported by lorry, you reduce the number of lorries on the road, you reduce the road danger, and you make your city streets into healthier and better places to be.
Every minute, 1 million plastic drinking bottles are bought around the world. In Britain, more than 7.5 billion single-use water bottles are used every year. London is the biggest consumer and the worst for recycling. The average adult buys 175 plastic water bottles a year. Less than half are recycled. Many of them end up here in Britain's waterways. This small team of volunteers is working with the charity Thames 21. They're part of thousands of people who help clean and monitor the rubbish that flows through the river each year. Thames 21 says about 10% of the rubbish they collect here is plastic. Half of that are single-use plastic bottles like this one. And just a few months ago, volunteers here in London collected more than 4,000 single-use bottles in just one day. The charity hopes the new fountains will make a difference.
One of the reasons that people are buying water is because they don't have access to drinking water when they're out and about. The London Drinking Fountain Fund is going to fund 20 new fountains. That's a great start. We certainly want to see more, but we're very hopeful that people will start to use them.
And hopeful that more people will think of the environment and turn on the taps instead of turning to the bottle. Catherine Stansel, Al Jazeera, London.
A quick look at the top stories now. Iran is bracing for the first round of US sanctions to come into force following Donald Trump's withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear pact. Access to US banknotes will be blocked, and cars, carpets and foodstuffs from Iran will no longer be imported into the US. Tehran is already struggling to deal with a faltering economy. The rial has lost half of its value since April.
Tomorrow we'll see some financial
policy changes to try and salvage the value of the Iranian currency go into effect. But opposition political leaders and civilian protesters say that that's not enough. We need changes at the federal level, at the cabinet level, to try and counter the impact of these U.S. sanctions and the sort of economic, psychological warfare being carried out by the Trump administration on the Iranian economy.
Well, in our other headlines, at least 98 people are known to have died in an earthquake on the Indonesian island of Lombok. Thousands of others were left homeless after Sunday's 6.9 magnitude quake. The country's National Disaster Agency says the number of those killed is likely to rise as the search for those trapped under the rubble continues. Saudi Arabia has expelled Canada's ambassador and frozen trade agreements. The Saudis accuse Canada of interference for urging the release of jailed rights activists. The UAE and Bahrain are backing the Saudi position. Bangladesh's government says it's considering using the death penalty on those responsible for fatal traffic accidents. This as students protest for a 9th day over the death of 2 teenagers killed by a speeding bus. Meanwhile, activists say armed groups linked to the government and the police have been attacking protesting students in Dhaka in an attempt to quash the demonstrations. And at least 2 people have been killed and dozens of others injured after 2 trucks collided on a motorway in the northern Italian city of Bologna. The crash sent a huge ball of fire and billows of black smoke into the air and caused a bridge along the motorway to collapse. One of the trucks is believed to have been carrying flammable material. Roads around the area have been closed. Well, those are the headlines. Inside Stories coming up next, and then the news hour after that in about 25 minutes' time. Do join me then. Bye for now.
Is peace possible in South Sudan? They fought for independence from Sudan, and when they got it, government forces and rival rebels warred with each other for years. Now, another power-sharing deal has been signed. But will it hold this time? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoum. The warring leaders in South Sudan are giving peace another chance. But is the agreement signed on Sunday in Sudan finally the one which will end 5 years of civil war? Many ceasefire deals have been signed, then collapsed within hours, and the fighting, which has killed tens of thousands and uprooted millions, didn't stop. Now, a second power-sharing agreement has been struck between President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar. The president says he's confident this one won't collapse. We'll get to our guest shortly, but first, Hiba Morgan has more.
Another agreement signed between South Sudan's government and opposition groups, and renewed hopes of ending 5 years of war. This time, regional countries brokered more than a month of direct discussions in the Sudanese capital Khartoum between the leaders of the warring sides. The civil war started less than 3 years after South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011. President Salva Kiir accused his former vice president, Riek Machar, of attempting a coup. Since then, tens of thousands have been killed, and a third of the 12 million population forced from their homes. The latest agreement gives an 8-month pre-transitional period, after which Riek Machar is due to return as vice president. The deal stipulates 35 ministers in a transitional government, 20 from Kiir's party and 9 from Machar's. The rest represent other parties. Parliament will have 550 legislators, including 332 from Kiir's group and 128 from Machar's. Opposition leader Riek Machar says the latest deal will bring peace. A power-sharing deal signed 3 years ago saw Machar return to his position months later, only for fighting to soon restart. Some, such as Flora Yawa, who saw what happened then, are cautiously optimistic now.
When the 2016 fighting happened, we were trapped. So much has changed since the war.
My sister lost her husband, and we also lost another relative. We couldn't do anything, we just stayed at home. Now we just want peace.
Around 6 million South Sudanese rely on foreign aid to survive. With the economy devastated by war, many are hanging their hopes on this agreement. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera.
All right, at just over 7 years old, South Sudan is the world's youngest country. It gained independence from Sudan following a referendum in 2011. A political dispute 2 years later between President Salva Kiir and his vice president, Riek Machar, turned into war. A ceasefire agreement was reached in 2014, but it didn't hold for long. Peace talks and deals all failed. The first power-sharing peace agreement was signed in 2015, which saw the return of Machar as first vice president. The deal collapsed within a year. Fighting resumed in the capital, Juba, and Machar fled the country. All right, we'd like to stress that this program made several attempts to invite a spokesman for the South Sudanese government on the program today, but nobody was available to speak to us. So let's bring in our panel for the show. Joining us via Skype from Nairobi, Deo Gumba, researcher at the Institute for Security Studies Office in Kenya. In Washington, D.C., Ali Berji, visiting researcher at the United States Institute of Peace. And in London, Ahmed Suleiman, a researcher in the Africa program at Chatham House. Welcome to you all. Now, Ali, I want to start with you. Sunday's deal is just the latest ceasefire. It's the latest power-sharing agreement. What makes it different this time? Any hope that it will last?
I think it's first important to note that this isn't the final deal. Even though it's been reported that way, there will still be subsequent negotiations on security matters. The second point to make is that this deal does not repeal the earlier 2015 peace agreement that you mentioned earlier. That is still in effect, but it's not clear what exactly will be implemented from that and what will be implemented from this agreement and how one selects between those things. The third is that it sets up a very long timetable for actual implementation, and so in these 8 months that are being talked about, a lot could happen, a lot could change. There is also a limitation because not everyone who is fighting has been involved in the process in Khartoum, and not everyone who signed yesterday appears to be fully representative of their own parties as well. So we can expect over the next few days to see various statements, perhaps some denunciations of the agreement. There's still a long way to go before this agreement leads South Sudan to peace.
Dale, let me ask you, many observers are saying that the structure of this agreement thus far looks very similar to the accord that was signed in 2016, and thus they are worried that it's going to collapse. What do you think?
I would say that it's different this time because of the commitment of the regional governments, the commitment of the parties themselves, because there is a lot of optimism from the groups that this time it's not going to collapse. The main groups, that is, there are, of course, smaller groups that cannot be ignored, and that could cause serious problems, as my colleague has just noted. But I think the optimism of the involvement of the entire region. Remember that this agreement was signed was negotiated in almost all the four main cities of this region. So that makes it a little bit different from the rest, although it is the same in letter and spirit almost.
Ahmed, you heard Deo there just talk about regional involvement. Certainly, neighbors of South Sudan far more involved in this deal than they have been in other deals. Do you think that is going to help this out more this time?
Well, I think that the neighbouring countries, the countries within IGAD, have always been extremely important to the IGAD peace process deal. I mean, what seems to set this current peace deal apart is that you have largely Sudan and Uganda leading the process, and this process has been taken in, called the Khartoum process. So it's essentially the leverage that the Sudanese government provides on the parties who are signing, as well as the Ugandan government, which has been a strong supporter of President Kiir's South Sudanese government during this period, that we'll see if the deal can be one that lasts and one that holds. And of course, What we do know is that there are important economic incentives for both parties. There's an economic crisis, of course, in South Sudan, but there's also one in Sudan, on the promise that some of the oil fields in Unity State largely will be reconstituted and start producing oil again to feed into the economies of Sudan and South Sudan is an important part of this deal. What we don't know, for example, is how that oil money is going to be spent, what the oversight over that kind of financing is going to be, whether or not it's going to go, when it goes into an escrow account, whether or not the international community will have any oversight over that. So there are lots of areas of this deal where potentially it could be a success because of the high-level engagement of the region, but also perhaps it could fall short because of their engagement.
Ali, you just heard Ahmed talk about, the issue of oil, and, the ink was barely dry on the signing of this accord before President of Sudan, Omar Bashir, was talking about the fact that he foresaw that oil would be flowing from South Sudan starting in September. First of all, I want to ask you, do you think that's realistic? And secondly, Sudan, of course, has been accused of meddling, in the war in South Sudan, in the conflict. So can they be trusted as a guarantor of a peace deal?
Well, of course, there is already oil flowing. There has been oil flowing continually. There are two main areas. Ahmed just referred to Unity. The other area of oil production was largely unaffected by the conflict. And so the hope would be that in this short time you could somehow rehabilitate the damaged oil fields and turn up production in that respect. I think that's actually going to take much longer than anybody has indicated, whether the various oil ministers or indeed President Bashir. So any immediate impact in terms of oil revenue will take much longer. Of course, oil prices are rising generally, and that may increase revenue to both South Sudan and Sudan in that respect. There is a long history between Sudan and South Sudan, which makes their relationship fraught because of the border, because of water, because of oil, because of the migration of people. The idea that Sudan is somehow a neutral mediator, I think we all can agree that that isn't the case. But that doesn't mean that Sudan can't necessarily be a force to influence a process more positively. I think there are two limitations. One is that Sudan's own interests can't really be separated from the possibility that it isn't a neutral or isn't a trusted mediator, let's say, between all of the South Sudanese elements inside the country. Certainly there is a degree of what's so Sudanese interests more than anything else. But also, this idea that there is a way to compel compliance is something that is extremely difficult. So if the government of South Sudan or the new government of South Sudan doesn't live up to certain elements of the deal, what can the Sudanese do about it? Part of the problem of these peace processes is that the compliance, the mechanism for enforcement, oversight, whatever you want to call it, doesn't necessarily lead to concrete actions. We see that now with violations of the ceasefire, for example, where there have been violations documented by the regional monitors from these same countries, and yet there's very little action or consequences as a result of those violations. So the deal itself has the same limitation, has the same problem. I don't see how the Sudanese can do anything different in that respect on the basis of the current framework.
Dio, the civil war in South Sudan has been very complicated from the start. It's been fueled by personal and ethnic rivalries. I want to ask you, what role does tribalism play in this conflict?
It plays the same role that it has played in several African countries. When I look at the example of my own country, Kenya, even at this stage of independence, you still have those ethnic interests coming into play in a lot of issues that are being discussed at the national level. So when you have elections, then you will see that coming up. So when you look at South Sudan, therefore, you're going to see that when it comes to the division of resources, because this is a country that is just beginning to rebuild, and each one of those ethnic groups is going to want a very good share of the cake. And I think that if that is not carefully planned and carefully done, it is likely to cause a lot of problems. The other cake that, apart from the economic issues, there is also the political issues, the division of political offices, the division of appointments into government. Those are also very important, and they will be looked at very, very critically by the parties that are involved. They want to see how many of their people, how many of their politicians and leaders are represented in those governments, in the government and in the departments and ministries of the government. So from the economic perspective and the political perspective, that factor of ethnic rivalry or ethnic balancing is very, very important.
Ahmed, in March, a UN panel of investigators said dozens of senior army officers in South Sudan have likely committed crimes against humanity, including mass rapes and civilian murders. Do you expect that now there will be any accountability? Will we see trials going forward? Will anybody be held responsible for these crimes?
It's very difficult to say. There is a provision in the 2015 agreement for the establishment of an African Union hybrid court. I have to say that any sort of progress towards the establishment of that court has been minimal in the last 3 years, and also in the interests of holding peace, several of the sides have suggested that if that kind of court were to be established, that it would be something which would prevent peace from first of all being established and then being maintained. Of course, we have seen quite recently UN Security Council sanctions, including individual sanctions on some commanders, but ultimately these have fallen short and been lacking as well, in that the individuals that we have seen that have been targeted weren't necessarily sanctioned when the sanctions were included. So we're talking about people such as the Information Minister Michael McQuay, the Defense Minister Kwame Nyonjak. These ministers haven't been, whereas previous commanders in the army, including Paul Malone, who's currently now an opposition figure, are those who have had sanctions placed on them. So in terms of reparations and looking at the future, it really will be a matter of political will. And as we say now, looking at the nature of the way the peace process and the peace deal has been signed, we don't know the level of international oversight over this peace deal, what the international community, how they are going to engage in this. What we do know is that the interests of the region and of Sudan and Uganda are primarily driving this peace deal, and perhaps those issues may take a backseat.
Dale, Ahmed was just talking about political will. You were speaking a moment ago about the complexity of this conflict. Look, even if the politicians adhere to this framework, to this agreement, are they going to be able to keep their fighters in line?
That's an interesting one. First of all, we have seen the smaller groups saying that there is serious lack of consistency in the allocation of power sharing. We see that from there that there is a group that is disgruntled right from the start. And a lot of times there are also interests within the group. So even though the leaders like Riek Machar and Salva Kiir have signed these agreements, and they are, waxing lyrical about the prospects and their confidence that it's not going to collapse this time around. There is a possibility that there are certain interests within their groups that could go against their wish. The example has been given of Paul Malone, who is now in the opposition. In the last time fighting broke out in 2016, Paul Malone was very much at the center of it all, and he was representing some of the interests that then went against that went against the spirit of togetherness or of having a unity government. So that example could be seen in other interests that could come up and that could become spoilers of this peace agreement.
Ali, the U.S. has backed South Sudanese independence. They gave billions of dollars in aid over the years, but just earlier this year, America was warning South Sudan that their support might end if the war there didn't. Is this one of the reasons why this peace deal was coming together? I mean, what role is the U.S. playing in all of this right now?
Well, I think the reasons for the peace deal coming together have a lot more to do with the regional interests, but also the government, the sitting government's own desire to maintain legitimacy and need an extension, need some way to hold on to office, and a peace deal obviously provides that. It's less about the U.S. role in that respect. I think the United States is very frustrated with the peace process. It's frustrated with the South Sudanese. It issued a statement, the White House issued a statement not long ago saying it was concerned at the direction the peace process was taking. I think the concerns remain. I think there's a great deal of skepticism over whether power sharing is the right approach. I should acknowledge that as somebody who was involved in the earlier mediations, we did pursue a power-sharing approach. I think the fact it failed is good evidence to suggest it shouldn't be tried again in a very, very similar fashion, that new innovation is needed. I think the United States is upset that there hasn't been more substantive progress in terms of the humanitarian situation, in terms of addressing the conflict, and so there is a concern that this political process isn't going to solve the problems and therefore needs to be reconsidered, although there isn't clarity within the administration about how one might go about doing that. And so clearly supporting the region has been the basic principle of the last few years. That to some extent remains, but there are still concerns.
Ahmed Ali was talking about humanitarian concerns just then, and I want to ask you to expand on that because millions of South Sudanese depend on foreign aid to survive. And aid agencies have worried in the past about donor fatigue. If this peace deal falls through, or if this iteration of the peace deal falls through, will that make it that much harder for aid to be flowing into South Sudan?
I think it's already extremely hard, and I think donor fatigue is one of the issues that has hit South Sudan in particular extremely hard with trying to meet the contributions necessary to provide humanitarian assistance to the South Sudanese people. As you say, millions of people, it's 4 million people who are displaced either internally in South Sudan, with hundreds of thousands in the protection of civilian sites, or 2.5 million people outside of the country in neighboring countries, 1 million in Uganda. What this peace deal potentially does do is give a bit more of a lift in terms of being able to concretely provide for humanitarian access to difficult-to-reach areas, if it were to last, that is, and if fighting, local fighting as well as intercommunal fighting in many areas were to cease or to levels were to drop as a result of that. But I think on the global level, the difficulty will remain. The challenge will be huge in trying to meet the humanitarian needs. The UN has consistently said that in the last 6 months or so. And it's a regional challenge as much as it is a challenge in South Sudan. And I think the UN in particular and agencies that it has been supporting have been very overstretched. And let's not forget that South Sudan being one of the worst conflicts globally, we have also seen an increase in targeting of humanitarians working in South Sudan, and that has made them, rightly, of course, risk-averse.
Yeah, Ahmed, I mean, the UN says it is the deadliest place for humanitarian workers in the world, correct?
Absolutely. I think, I can't remember the number, but over 170 killed in the last 2 or 3 years. One of the deadliest places in the world, and it has made you know, the work of meeting the needs of South Sudanese people who are displaced and who are vulnerable, and that's up to 70% of the population. Meeting those needs extremely difficult, and those challenges I think are likely to be ongoing for the international community. But as I said, there is a glimmer of hope in that if this current peace process, and we're talking a long way ahead, is able to hold, then that will at least enable more solid humanitarian access to more difficult to reach areas in South Sudan. But I think also,
Ahmed, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that we're almost out of time. I just want to get one more question into Deo here. Deo, you heard Ahmed speaking about the humanitarian crisis, the impact of it. I want to ask you specifically about the displacement crisis. There's over 2 million South Sudanese that fled the war in South Sudan, living in neighboring countries. What happens to them now? Do you think it will be safe for them to be able to come back? Would they want to come back?
I think given the fact that there has been in the past the breaking of ceasefires and agreements have not been able to hold, I think they will be very skeptical to come back immediately. There has to be some level of confidence creating, and that would happen in seeing that the economy is flourishing, the oil is sold, and most importantly, what has been said is that maybe the oil and the money that is generated in the economy is not the problem. The problem is how it is managed. And many of the people in government in South Sudan have been accused of corruption and diverting money that is meant for development.
Deo, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Deo, it's just that we're out of time. We're going to have to end it there. We're out of time. Gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all our guests, Deo Gumba, Ali Verji, and Ahmed Suleiman. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.
A survivor of a genocide.
There were people who begged me to kill them, to end their suffering, but I didn't have the heart to do it.
Who's dedicated his life to searching the woods for bones of the victims of the Srebrenica massacre.
And here is the job.
In a hope of finally laying the past to rest and giving peace to the victims' families.
If I could just find a finger bone, I could bury him.
Bone Hunter on Al Jazeera.
Train and equip the opposition in Syria so they can help push back these terrorists.
People in Power investigates how the U.S. supplies Soviet-style weapons to its allies through private companies.
Then the U.S. government could wash their hands and say, well, we didn't know where it was coming from.
So a weapon that was supplied by the U.S. government may well end up being pointed at U.S. soldiers.
Yes, absolutely. We pick it up less than 2 months after it left the factory.
America's Guns, Secret Pipeline to Syria on Al Jazeera.
New Yorkers are very receptive to Al Jazeera because it is such an international city. They're very interested in that global perspective that Al Jazeera provides.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello, I'm Mariam Namazi. This is the News Hour live from London. Coming up, Iran's president speaks out just hours before the return of US sanctions. Hassan Rouhani says Washington cannot be trusted. Rescuers scramble to find survivors after Sunday's deadly earthquake in Indonesia. 98 people are confirmed dead. Also, Ed.
Wonder which way?
I always get to where I'm going to by walking away from where I've been.
Do you?
Cuddly Bear or Enemy of the State? China bans a new movie starring Winnie the Pooh.
In sport, a UK court has heard that one of cricket's biggest names was involved in a sustained episode of violence. England player Ben Stokes is charged with a fray and faces the possibility of jail time.
Welcome to the program. Our top story: Iran's president has given a television interview just hours before US sanctions will come back into effect. Hassan Rouhani once again accused Washington of being untrustworthy. The sanctions were triggered by Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the 2015 nuclear pact, which the White House has described as horrible. We'll be live in Tehran in a moment with more on what's being said there. First, though, this report from Kimberly Halkett.
The United States says Iran is a threat, and it wants to punish the country's government by isolating it from the global financial system. Starting Tuesday, U.S. sanctions will be reimposed to target a range of sectors, blocking Iran from purchasing U.S. banknotes and trading in gold and metals like aluminum and steel. It will also limit Iran's access to software and automotive sectors, while blocking its ability to purchase commercial aircraft or trade in food and other goods.
This was a horrible, one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made.
The snapback sanctions are part of a promise made by U.S. President Donald Trump when he withdrew the United States in May from the 2015 agreement known as the JCPOA. Close U.S. allies like France's President Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel remain committed to the agreement aimed at limiting Tehran's nuclear program. But the U.S. argues it didn't work, as it didn't go far enough. The U.S. also argues the profits made from the lifting of sanctions is being used to purchase and export weapons in places like Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza to support proxy militias and the state financing of terrorism. The sanctions come as protests continue in Iran against deteriorating economic conditions, but the United States denies the sanctions are timed to force regime change. Instead, it says it hopes to modify the Iranian government's behavior. Despite long-standing U.S. policy of no formal diplomatic relations with Iran, President Donald Trump has even indicated he's willing to sit down for talks with Iran's leaders.
No preconditions, no. They want to meet, I'll meet, anytime they want.
These snapback sanctions are also just the beginning. In 90 days, another round of even more punishing sanctions targeting Iran's massive oil industry will come into effect. Kimberly Halkett, Al Jazeera, the White House.
Well, let's get reaction from Tehran now. Zain Basravi is there for us, and the President Hassan Rouhani has been giving a television interview, and he seems to be conveying a message of defiance in response to these sanctions. Zain.
Absolutely, there were a few very interesting moments in his answers in this interview. Now, it has to be said, there's not a lot of new information. There's not a lot new you can say. The stalemate between the United States and Iran has been going on for many, many months. But there were a few things that were very interesting. If you were to do a word cloud of all of his answers, I think the word China would stick out quite a bit. He mentioned China several times. No doubt an indication that that is one of the signatories to the nuclear deal and an economic ally, a partner in the region that Iran intends on relying on heavily in the future to help sort of stem the impact of U.S. sanctions as they move forward. And he also addressed the idea of speaking to Donald Trump, and with sort of a smile, a smirk on his face, President Hassan Rouhani said that he would be open to negotiating with the United States and with the American leader if they were going to talk about the United States apologizing to Iran and paying it back for all the economic harm it has caused. by interfering in the country's affairs. Now, that was certainly meant to be a sort of sarcastic way to talk about the idea of talking to Donald Trump, but he also addressed the issue in a more serious way. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
The person who has abandoned negotiations is Trump and his government, and he is doing something which is against the Iranian people, against the interests of Iran. If there was honesty, Iran would come to negotiations. The US sanctions contradict any intention to negotiate. How can you be honest about wanting to negotiate if you're putting sanctions against children and sick people?
So a very interesting line of argument Rouhani is taking there. What is the view amongst the public, amongst people there in Tehran about the prospect of new sanctions, but also the possibility of talks with Trump, which of course he raised earlier?
Well, this deal, the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action as it's known, has become an incredibly toxic policy. The Rouhani government sold it as the cure-all for the country's economic problems. That has not happened. The policies become toxic, and the government that pushed for it and negotiated it here in Iran has become deeply unpopular because of that. Now, President Hassan Rouhani, in his answers, also addressed some of the financial problems people are going through. There are new financial policies expected to come in place to try to control the falling value of the currency, the Iranian rial. And he also spoke directly to people, and he said he knows that there are a number of people that are experiencing very difficult financial hardship, and he thanked them. And he especially thanked them, the ones who are not going out into the streets and protesting, for their patience. But yet we're still waiting on seeing what solutions this government can put forward to try to make their economic circumstances better.
All right, thank you very much, Zain Basravi in Tehran. Well, Ahmed Majidyar is the director of the Iran Observe Project at the Middle East Institute. He joins us now from Washington. So as we were hearing from Zain, these sanctions come at a time when the currency is suffering. It's been weakening. That's pushed up food prices by some 50%. Unemployment is on the rise as well. How much damage will these sanctions do to the economy in Iran?
The US withdrawal from the nuclear deal had already undermined the Iranian economy. We've seen over the recent months that the Iranian currency has been on free fall, inflation has been soaring, and employment has been increasing. And most importantly, people have lost hope, and in anticipation of the sanctions, a lot of Iranian business people, they had transferred their assets and capital abroad. So that's why the economic situation has already been deteriorating. But with the reinstatement of sanctions, things will probably get worse because many major international banks and companies have already scaled down or their activities in Iran. And as sanctions are coming back, more will withdraw from the Iranian market. And although the Europeans are trying to salvage the Iran nuclear deal and continue to do business with Iran, but ultimately banks and companies do not listen to the government, they make their own decisions. And because of the fear of the US sanctions, they would be very reluctant to invest in Iran or do business with Tehran after this.
President Hassan Rouhani is speaking on Iranian television at the moment, and he is really playing up the relationship with China at this point in time. Even if there isn't very much that the Europeans can do, might the relationship with China, particularly given the trade dispute that's playing out with the United States, help to buffer the Iranian economy in some way?
In the next 3 months that the Trump administration has given that window to the countries around the world to scale down their oil imports from Iran, I believe that most of the European countries, as well as US allies like Japan and South Korea, will scale down their imports from Iran significantly. However, China and India will most probably continue to import Iran's oil. So that's why we see the emphasis by President Rouhani on China. And even in his latest trip to China and his meeting with President Xi, he tried to encourage China to continue business with Iran. And the most important sector, of course, for Iran is the oil sector.
And yet we have seen a great resilience from Iran in the past. They have faced the pressure and the damage of US sanctions before. Could it be worse this time around?
It remains to be seen because ultimately the problems, the economic problems in Iran, it's not just because of sanctions. It also has to do a lot with mismanagement and corruption, which is endemic in the Islamic Republic as well. And as the sanctions are coming back and as the Trump administration is increasing pressure on the Iranian government, I don't see any plan by the government, any comprehensive plan to rescue the economy and improve the socio-economic conditions of the people. Most Iranian leaders talk about resistance economy. That means that less reliance on the foreign countries and more reliance on the domestic capacities. But such policies in the past have undermined the private sector, and it has empowered the revolutionary guards, and that has come at the expense of the Iranian people's economic conditions. So unless that the Iranian government come up with a plan to address these issues, I think that the sanctions will further undermine the Iranian economy.
All right, well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on this story with us. Ahmad Majidyar, Director of the Iran Observe Project at the Middle East Institute, joining us there from Washington. Well, now moving to our other top story this hour, rescuers on the Indonesian island of Lombok still trying to assess the extent of the damage from Sunday's powerful earthquake, the second to strike there in a week. At least 98 people are known to have died, but as Step Varson reports from Lombok, many more might be trapped in the wreckage of their homes.
From under the rubble of a mosque, women's voices could still be heard 3 hours after the earthquake struck. The disaster happened during prayers when the mosque was full. Neighbors heard women screaming, but had no equipment to rescue them. When rescue workers arrived 20 hours later, the screaming had stopped.
I'm sure people are still trapped here. Some of them we managed to pull out, but they died a few hours later.
Islanders on Lombok were still recovering from last week's powerful quake, when the even bigger tremor happened. Many were too late to make it to safety, as buildings collapsed around them. The Mataram hospital was also severely damaged, so the injured had to be treated outdoors. Zulkarnain was going to pray when the mosque gate collapsed on top of him.
What we need is tents. We have received some help from the government, but we need more tents to be able to treat our patients.
It's peak tourist season and nearly 3,000 visitors were evacuated from the Gili Islands near Lombok. Tourists panicked on the 3 small, flat islands when a tsunami warning was issued. Some were injured trying to reach safety, including a Spanish tourist who fell from a tree. Most tourists want to leave as soon as possible.
We decided to leave the island, but I don't really know no one was saying whether that was what you should do or not. So yeah, did that, and I just want to get away from Lombok and get out of Indonesia, really.
The tsunami warning was quickly lifted, but the quake damage will take a lot longer to repair.
In just a few minutes, this 2-story mosque collapsed into rubble. People in Lombok remain in shock after the second earthquake in a week left many homeless. While help is on the way, search and rescue workers are struggling with the extent of the damage.
Heavy equipment needed to rescue or recover trapped worshippers has yet to arrive at the mosque. Some say they've heard weak cries from under the rubble, but it may be too late. Step Varson, Al Jazeera, Tanjung, Lombok.
You at the News Hour live from London, much more still to come. Ethiopia's federal government takes over the country's Somali region after a weekend of violence that left 50 dead. Canada stands by its human rights comments despite Saudi Arabia freezing all new trade and ordering the country's ambassador out. And testing times for Barcelona's latest signing. We'll have the details on that story and more in sport. Bangladesh's government is considering using the death penalty for fatal traffic accidents as students protest for a 9th day over the deaths of 2 teenagers who were killed by a speeding bus. Groups armed with wooden batons have attacked protesting students at East-West University in Dhaka. Activists say the groups are linked to the government and the police in an attempt to crack down on the demonstrations. Meanwhile, the Committee to Protect Journalists is calling for the release of anyone who's being held because of their coverage of the protests. Photographer and journalist Shahidul Alam was detained soon after this interview on Al Jazeera on Sunday. At least 5 journalists were attacked during the protests. Tanvir Chowdhury is in the capital, Dhaka.
Hundreds of journalists have gathered here in Shunargarh Square in the city. They're here forming a human chain, silently protesting for the attacks on the journalist community within the last 1 week by unknown elements and the police. The police were standing there where journalists were attacked. This has been uncalled for. They feel intimidated. They can't perform their professional duty. A lot of the journalists saying that you can be in a war zone and still not be targeted. But here, out here, while we are covering a protest march, we were targeted by certain elements of the society in front of the police. This has been a major sense of contention. Now we have reaction from some of the journalists here. This is what they had to say.
We have one demand. Journalists should be able to work safely. We want the Home Ministry to identify these attackers so we can perform our professional duties safely.
We are journalists, also unsafe. That's why we are gathering here. Journalists are beaten here and there, and we want free mass media in Bangladesh.
The protest for road safety and safety for journalists is something we want together. The reason we want this is because in the last few days, the peaceful protests taking place gradually took a very violent turn.
This is a major concern for the media community in Bangladesh right now. They want protection and security and justice for those who attack them. Some of them said, we know who the culprits are, we have their pictures, the government needs to bring them to justice. Now we also have a renowned photographer, Dr. Shahidul Alam. He's been detained by the detective police, that's been revealed now today. Despite everything that's going on in the city, the media community is very concerned and feel threatened. They're unwilling to cover any protest right now because they feel personally insecure to go and cover any kind of protest or any kind of demonstration in the city right now.
Saudi Arabia has ordered Canada's ambassador out of the country in a dispute over human rights. It's also frozen all new trade, investment and educational agreements. The Saudis accuse the Canadian government of interference for urging the release of jailed civil society and women's rights activists. The UAE and Bahrain are backing the Saudi position. Paul Chedurjian reports.
Canada's ambassador to Saudi Arabia is on his way home. The Saudis say Dennis Horak is no longer welcome, and they're accusing the Canadian government of interfering in the kingdom's internal affairs as well as spreading misinformation.
The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs has expressed disbelief by this negative, unfounded comment, which was not based on any accurate or true information.
The diplomatic dispute was triggered by the Canadian embassy in Riyadh tweeting its concern about the arrest of civil society and women's rights activists, including Samar Badawi. The tweets urged the Saudi authorities to release them.
Women's suffrage.
Political activist Samar Badawi was honored in 2012 by then U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and First Lady Michelle Obama. Badawi was jailed after suing the kingdom for the right to choose her own husband.
Freedom of expression is a human right.
Her brother Raif Badawi was sentenced to 10 years and 1,000 lashes in 2014 for insulting Islam through a blogging website for public debate. Others arrested by Saudi police have pressed for the rights of women and the rights of Shia Muslim minority. Another woman was taken into custody because she's married to an Islamic law scholar.
It's absolutely ridiculous. The Saudi authorities can, on the one hand, come through with some limited reforms, like the lifting of the driving ban, but on the other hand, arrest the very same women who helped to bring about this reform. Since May, we've seen more than a dozen women's rights activists arrested in what is an unprecedented crackdown.
The kingdom has just allowed women to drive for the first time and to attend sporting events, and cinemas have opened after being banned. Saudi Arabia is a major trading partner, supplying 10% of Canadian crude oil imports. Canada listed Saudi Arabia as the second largest buyer of Canadian arms after the U.S. The two countries signed a $12 billion arms deal 4 years ago.
Canada was to deliver important trucks and other armored vehicles. And also, Saudi Arabia is a source of revenue for a number of Canadian universities, since thousands of Saudis are coming to the Canadian universities for their education.
Critics say Canada's allies must help in taking a stand to pressure the kingdom to stop its crackdown on activists calling for change. Paul Chadurjian, Al Jazeera.
Now, Ethiopia's federal government has taken over the administration of the eastern Somali region. On Saturday, 50 people were killed in violence in the regional capital of Jigjiga. Violence broke out after the government deployed its troops there, leading to fighting with paramilitary soldiers loyal to the regional government. Mohammed Ado is following developments for us now from neighbouring Djibouti. Mohammed, what do we know about the situation there? Is the violence still going on?
No, Mariam, the violence stopped on Saturday, although it broke out in the neighboring city of Diridawa, where Oromo tribesmen, in retaliation for the killings of their people in Jigjiga by Somali people who had gone on riot after the shootout between the local police and the federal troops, targeted Oromo-owned businesses, killing about 50 people. Now, the government is saying that they had to take this very rare step in Ethiopia because the administration in Jigjiga, the capital of the Somali region, had gone rogue and was on the verge of announcing the separation of the region from the rest of Ethiopia, relying on a clause in the constitution. However, the Minister for Communication took to live TV just about an hour ago, saying that federal troops and policemen have been deployed, the government has fully taken over, and in the coming days they will start the process of electing a political leadership for the region.
How smooth is that process likely to be in light of recent events, Mohammed?
Well, Mariam, the whole crisis arose from the refusal by the regional president to come to Addis Ababa for consultation with the Prime Minister's office. This, according to senior government officials. They say that his refusal to vacate office as part of the reforms the new Prime Minister is initiating in the regions is what has resulted in this, and they say that this region, which has been volatile for a long time, that they could not would just watch it go down the drain.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Ado, with all the latest on what's happening there in Ethiopia's Somali region, reporting to us from Djibouti. Now, the new Christopher Robin movie will not be released in China, and many believe that's because leader Xi Jinping is prickly about comparisons between him and one of the lead characters, Winnie the Pooh. China's censorship of the cartoon bear started last year, with authorities blocking images on social media because people were likening Pooh's appearance to Xi's. Adrian Brown explains.
Winnie the Pooh, of course, means different things to different people. To many children around the world, he's the adorable pudgy bear with a penchant for honey. But it seems here in China, he has become an enemy of the state. That's because a new film made by Disney, Christopher Robin, in which Winnie the Pooh, of course, has a starring role, will not now be shown in China. No reason has been given. China imports about 40 foreign films a year, and while that quota hasn't been reached yet, no reason has been given as to why Christopher Robin will not now be shown in China. Now, Winnie the Pooh sort of got in the crosshairs of Chinese censors more than a year ago. That's when images started appearing online contrasting Winnie the Pooh with President Xi Jinping. There was apparently a physical resemblance. The most popular meme photograph of all is one which pairs a picture of Xi Jinping and then President Barack Obama with another picture of Winnie the Pooh and his good mate, Tigger. Winnie the Pooh has, in many ways, become a symbol, an unlikely symbol of dissent. That's because Liu Xiaobo, who won the Nobel Peace Prize and, of course, died in hospital more than a year ago, was pictured holding a mug with an image of Winnie the Pooh on it shortly before he died. It was a final defiant stance by a man who had been a thorn in the side of China's government for so long. Now, while it's fair to say that censorship under President Xi Jinping has been getting worse during the past few years, you know, as a journalist, you encounter it every day here in China, there has nevertheless been some pushback during the past few weeks. Just last week, there was a protest by parents outside the health ministry here in Beijing. They believe the government is covering up the true extent of a vaccine scandal. Vaccines, substandard vaccines that emerged, were given to children for things like tetanus, typhoid, and also whooping cough, as well as rabies. But as we now know, those vaccines were substandard. And then just a few days ago, there was a curious essay that was published online. It was written by a prominent Chinese academic, and he criticized President Xi Jinping and said it was time for the Communist Party to look again at what happened in 1989 when those protests ended in so many people dying. He said it was time for the Chinese government to reevaluate what happened in 1989, and he also said it was time for the party to reverse its decision to end two-term limits for President Xi Jinping. President Xi, at the moment, of course, arguably the most powerful Chinese leader since Chairman Mao.
Still ahead for you on the programme. Venezuela's health crisis spills into Brazil, causing a deadly measles outbreak. A weekend of gun violence in Chicago leaves at least 11 people dead, but police insist the murder rate is dropping. And the NASCAR driver who didn't let anyone get between him and the first win of his career.
Hello again. Time to take a look at weather conditions across Levant and western parts of Asia. A generally fine picture, though we still have the risk of some showers on the southern side of the Caspian Sea. Also some showers between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, across the Caucasus, and eastern side of the Mediterranean, generally looking dry and fine. Fine day in Beirut, there temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius. So you can see the showers around the Black Sea still persisting as we head on through into Wednesday. Meanwhile, further south, patchy cloud across the Arabian Peninsula, but generally fine temperatures in the low 40s for the most part. Here in Doha, we're looking at a high of 43 degrees. And again, enough breeze to keep the humidity values relatively low. Heading into Wednesday, not a great deal of change expected. Salalah, somewhat cooler, highs of 27 and patchy low cloud. Across into southern parts of Africa. A largely fine picture, chance of a few showers for Cape Town, fairly brisk winds here, but otherwise it's a largely fine picture to head on through into Wednesday. Windhoek in Namibia there, sunshine highs of 28. For central parts of Africa, still got showers quite a long way north across parts of Sudan, Chad, Niger, and then further towards the west, also looking quite showery. Bamako in Mali could be quite wet during the course of Tuesday, but it should be dry in Accra and Ghana, and also in Lagos, Nigeria.
August on Al Jazeera.
European Muslims today are facing the consequences of having their faith linked to armed attacks, even though they too are victims of the violence.
The largest multi-sport event on the continent, Asian Games in Jakarta, will host athletes competing in a mix of traditional and Olympic sports.
A vibrant new series of character-led documentaries from immigrant neighbourhoods across Europe.
A series of reports about the state of the world's forests and what's being done to protect them.
In a three-part series, Al Jazeera uncovers the motivations and impact of the brutal human exploitation system that laid the foundation of today's global powers.
August on Al Jazeera.
Capturing a moment in time. Snapshots of other lives, other stories. Providing a glimpse into someone else's world. Witness on Al Jazeera.
Just a quick reminder of the top stories now. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has given a television interview accusing Washington of being untrustworthy just hours before US sanctions come back into effect. The sanctions were triggered by Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the 2015 nuclear deal. At least 98 people are known to have died and thousands have been left homeless after Sunday's earthquake on the Indonesian island of Lombok. The search for survivors is continuing. And Bangladesh's government is considering using the death penalty for fatal traffic accidents as protests continue over the deaths of 2 teenagers killed by a speeding bus. Activists say armed groups have also been attacking demonstrators. Well, now government leaders in northern Iraq say ISIL sleeper cells remain a threat, but they also insist that a recent attack there is not a sign of the group's revival. The attack on the Kurdistan Regional Government headquarters 2 weeks ago resulted in the deaths of 3 gunmen and a hostage. Natasha Ghanem reports from Erbil.
Ahmed Salim isn't used to his 5 children seeing him in such a helpless state. The police officer was protector and sole provider for his family until 2 weeks ago. He was guarding the Erbil Governorate building, the headquarters of the Kurdistan Regional Government.
It was 7:22 a.m. They were kids wearing flip-flops. I didn't think they would do anything. All I remember is bang.
3 men armed with guns and grenades shot Salim and rushed inside. They took 3 hostages and killed 1 before being shot dead after a 4-hour firefight with security forces. Unable to move his neck, arm, and leg, Salim must be fed, dressed, and carried.
It's up to God. I have to do physical therapy. I hope I can recover soon.
A security forces chief says ISIL is responsible. Their target was the governor of Erbil, and to kill as many people as possible in the typically busy municipal building.
ISIL is in the towns of Kirkuk and Mahmud. These are the places for sleeper cells now, and where they have regrouped.
The Security Council of the Kurdistan region says this recent attack is not a sign of an ISIL revival. Rather, it's part of a pattern of intermittent attacks. There have been 5 in the last 11 years. Nawzad Hadi became governor shortly after his predecessor was killed, along with 11 others, in what was described as a terrorist attack 14 years ago. He says despite multiple attempts on his life, he doesn't think ISIL will gain momentum in Kurdistan.
There's an an agreement among the community, from the religious side, from our government, that we have to reject these ideas.
Ahmed Salim is dedicated to resuming his career. He's been a policeman for almost half his life. For now, he knows he needs to concentrate on his recovery, 1 finger and toe movement at a time. Natasha Ghanem, Al Jazeera, Erbil.
Brazil has launched a national vaccination campaign against measles. Authorities have started administering the vaccines in clinics across the country. The country's health ministry says more than 1,000 people have been infected and 5 killed in a recent outbreak. Daniel Schreimler is in Brazil's northwestern city of Manaus, one of the worst-hit areas. Daniel, tell us more about the government's campaign to try and contain the outbreak.
It's a huge campaign right across Brazil. They're talking about vaccinating 11 million children aged between the ages of 1 and 5. And in some regions, here in Amazonas, in a state in the north of the country, which has been particularly hard hit, they're also vaccinating some adults, the adults who want to come forward who haven't yet been vaccinated. I mean, they had eradicated measles from Brazil 18 years ago. They were very proud of that. And one of the consequences of the recent migration of many tens of thousands of Venezuelans across the border has been this recent outbreak of measles, which has spread not just across Brazil, but other neighbouring countries as well, down as far south as Argentina.
Which parts of the population are most at risk?
Well, children mostly, and also people in isolated areas, remote areas. Brazil is a huge country of more than 200 million people. So one of the biggest challenges has been to get to some of these outlying regions where people have not been vaccinated, to make sure they have blanket coverage. And they've been doing that with these health centres, a big campaign to make sure everybody is aware of what's going on and to get people to the health centres. I mean, we've been to places in Sao Paulo and here in Manaus where there have been huge queues of people, parents bringing their children, sometimes a little frightened by the needles, to be vaccinated. So this is the plan now, just to make sure they have blanket coverage. And so far, it's only the beginning of the campaign. There's still several more days, weeks to go to make sure they've got that blanket coverage, but they do seem to be well on the way to reaching everybody they need to reach.
Thank you very much from the city of Manaus in Brazil, Daniel Schreimler. At least 11 people have been killed and dozens have been injured in a spate of shootings in Chicago over the last 2 days. Police are blaming it mostly on gangs, saying they use large summer crowds as cover to shoot indiscriminately. Gun violence in the US city has been in the spotlight, and President Donald Trump and his lawyer Rudy Giuliani have criticized the city's Democratic mayor over the issue. Police insist the overall murder rate, though, has gone down. John Hendren has more.
Tempers seem to rise with the temperatures in Chicago, and this past weekend was a hot one, and that made it one of the most violent weekends of the year. The official police tally is that 64 people were shot and 11 people were killed over the weekend.
These shootings are not random. They are fueled by gang conflicts. We know who they are, and we continue to send a message that it's okay to commit these crimes by not doing anything as a community.
The shootings affected victims as young as 11 and as old as 62 years old. This has come to notice in Chicago. There have been 2 major marches blocking major thoroughfares in the city. Police say they will bring additional patrols, and they blame gangs shooting into crowds at major outdoor events such as funerals and block parties. So they say they will be patrolling those areas more. But really, this was a violent weekend, but not even the most violent over the past few years.
So for more on this story, let's speak to Reverend Gregory Seal Livingston. He's the president and founder of the social justice organization Coalition for a New Chicago. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us on the News Hour. First of all, can you start by explaining why, in your view, we are seeing this surge in gun violence?
The violence, the gangs, they're all symptoms of Chicago being a tale of 2 cities. Chicago has been intentionally segregated. When Martin Luther King was here, we did our march last week to Wrigley Field and shut down Lakeshore Drive, but I had it on Thursday purposely because it was a weekday, a business day, rush hour, Lollapalooza, but also because yesterday was the 52nd anniversary of Dr. King's march through Marquette Park, where he was hitting the head with a brick. But again, even then, he was fighting against this tale of 2 cities, because when you have a tale of 2 cities, one group is prospering and the other group is being ostracized and basically having everything taken away from them. So the gangs are a symptom of a group of people trying to get power and assets in an illegitimate manner with alternative economies. And so, and the violence is the currency that they use to do that.
So how do you even begin to tackle legacy problems like this, the intentional segregation, this tale of 2 cities that you speak of?
Well, you know, Rahm Emanuel did not begin the corruption. And I say corruption because we cannot continue to talk about violence and ignore the corrupt tree that produces it. He did not begin the corruption or the segregation, but we cannot allow him to perpetuate it either. Rahm Emanuel, for most of his administration, has been sitting on $500 million of HUD funds that were designated to be used for low-income housing. I'm telling you, many of the folk in these challenged and disadvantaged areas, there are people that don't know what their lives are like. Many of them don't have working toilets. They don't have heat in the wintertime or running water in the summertime. And that money could have been used to make their lives better. And I think if people feel better, they do better. But he has a $1 billion TIF fund or a slush fund where he hands out millions of dollars. He's doing downtown $1 million a block, but by the same token, he closes 50 schools at one time and destabilizes neighborhoods. And then you're going to pretend like you're surprised by the violence? No, we cannot allow this to be perpetuated.
Right, so then obviously he's not here to defend his policies and specific things that he has been enacting, but are you saying that this has to be the responsibility of local government, of state government? Because, you know, we've heard the Trump administration trying to kind of politicize this. They're blaming the Democrats for this, but is there anything the federal government can do? Where does the responsibility lie?
I'll tell you what, you know, I can't swim, but if I were to wade out into Lake Michigan, get caught up by a wave and start to drown, and a lifesaver came my way, I would not look to see who threw the lifesaver to me. I would just grab it, and hopefully they would pull me in. I think one of the things that we have to do is not to politicize this. We need to remove the labels and look at the human beings. Labels don't save human beings save human beings. And when we become so myopic that we can't see a person beyond their label, that's even a deeper sign of a psycho-spiritual, socio-economic sickness and disease that we must cut out and get rid of.
Right, so then what steps are you proposing? What activities do we know about at the community level that might be taking place?
Well, part of what's happening here, I love what Gandhi said. Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then we win. Right now, the challenged and disadvantaged communities are being ignored by the administration. And so we have to find a way to inspire the uninspired, which is why we are doing these demonstrations, and to get out there and to make something happen, because we have to redistribute the pain, the anguish, and the dormant hope. So one of the ways that we want to create more leverage for our demands in terms of economic investment on the south and west sides, justice for police murder victims, you know, black-led anti-violence programs, and also a repurposing of these 50 closed schools that were costing taxpayers $1 million a day to maintain closed, is that we're talking now, my colleagues and I, about shutting down O'Hare Field. Because if you won't hear the people in the ghetto cry and complain, you will definitely hear the individuals, the big money people that are flying in and out of Chicago. And so if that's what we have to do, then that's what we're going to have to do on Labor Day. So we're still talking about that, though. It's not definite.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us today, shedding some light on this story for us, Reverend Gregory Seal Livingston. Now, Mexico's new president-elect has promised a different way of dealing with organized crime. And Andrés Manuel López Obrador believes pulling young people out of poverty will help curb the country's epidemic of violence. For some, a former gang member and incoming state congressman is an example of how this plan could work. John Holman went to San Luis to meet him.
The new local congressman from San Luis, Mexico, out to meet his constituents. He's unlike any politician they've seen before, a Chavalbanda street kid, just like them, made good. For some, Pedro Carrizales, nicknamed El Mijis, is a blueprint for the incoming government on how they can rescue young people drawn to crime. His body's a patchwork of tattoos and knife cuts, product of a life of violence and drug addiction, until he hit bottom.
My mother was sick with kidney failure. They called me, and I was drinking with my crew, thinking, tomorrow she'll be okay. And she died, and I didn't get to say goodbye. And to kill the pain, I jumped in front of cars. I tried to hang myself from a tree in my garden. I was taking cocaine all the time. I was 24 years old.
That was the turning point. He sought help, a Christian mentor who gave him his first job. He in turn says he gained a faith and a mission to help San Luis's young and marginalized.
I realized there aren't public policies for the young, and that there are lots of them, like me, who didn't get to choose where they live. Children with dreams stopped, just like me. I wanted to be an actor, so I started to campaign for a space for them, and to try and reduce the fights between gangs.
He formed an association and organized football tournaments, dances, work programs. Hundreds of gang members turned up. He used it to broker peace deals between them.
I see him as an example to follow, that you can come from the barrio and still manage to become someone.
Now he's heading to the local Congress. Not everyone's pleased. Many criticize his criminal past and doubt he's reformed. He says he's received threats, but he says he can't let down those in the city's gangs now. His approach chimes with incoming President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's nationwide plans. Violence in Mexico is at record levels, and the incoming administration says the strategy has to change. Rather than just confronting those drawn to organised crime, they say that young people need to be offered other options. Controversially, that includes an amnesty for some low-level gang members. El Mijis supports that, and so far his base seems to follow him. But they have a warning.
Just don't lose sight of who you are. Remember, it's better to be remembered as a good person than to have a street named after you.
That's the test for El Mijis and the rest of the incoming government. Will they bring the social change they promise or succumb to their newfound political power? John Holman, Al Jazeera, San Luis Potosí.
At least 2 people have been killed and dozens of others injured after 2 trucks collided on a motorway in the northern Italian city of Bologna. The crash near the airport sent a huge ball of fire and billows of black smoke into the air and caused a bridge along the motorway to collapse. One of the trucks is believed to have been carrying flammable material. Firefighters are battling the flames, and roads around the area have also been closed off. Well, elsewhere, more than 1,000 firefighters are tackling a major wildfire in southern Portugal. The fire broke out on Saturday in the southern Algarve region, an area popular with tourists. Firefighters are also battling a fire near Portugal's border with Spain. Record high temperatures and high winds have made it more difficult to get the fires under control. Here with Al Jazeera, much more still ahead. The historic event looking for a new way to sell itself. We'll have that story and more in the sport. And how a 19th century initiative is being brought back to tackle London's 21st century plastic problem.
A survivor of a genocide.
There were people who begged me to kill them, to end their suffering, but I didn't have the heart to do it.
Who's dedicated his life to searching the woods for bones of the victims of the Srebrenica massacre.
And here is the draw.
In a hope of finally laying the past to rest and giving peace to the victims' families.
If I could just find a finger bone, I could bury him.
Bone Hunter on Al Jazeera.
He's here now with all your sport.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Well, a UK court has heard that one of cricket's biggest names was involved in a sustained episode of violence. England player Ben Stokes is charged with a fray and faces the possibility of jail time. The prosecution claims Stokes lost control during a fight in Bristol last year. The alleged incident resulted in a man suffering a fractured eye socket. Stokes will miss England's second test against India this week. Jurors were actually asked if they were committed cricket fans before being accepted for service. Stokes denies the charge. Chilean international Arturo Vidal has officially become a Barcelona player after coming through a longer than normal medical test. Vidal had a knee operation last season, but Barca were happy with the results, and his $35 million move from Bayern Munich has now been finalised. Barca are strengthening their squad following the departures of Andres Iniesta and Paulinho during the close season.
Of course, being at Barcelona is a much bigger deal than being at Bayern Munich. This, to me, is the best team in the world. I also think this could clearly be my year, so I must be in the best shape possible. I hope to win all the titles with Barca, so why not the Champions League in the next 3 seasons?
Well, Jose Mourinho says Manchester United still need to sign new players. The Premier League transfer window shuts on Thursday, with United in action the following day against Leicester. Mourinho is frustrated that many of his squad have only just returned to training after the World Cup.
They're back tomorrow. Even we were, I want to say a nice words. We weren't lucky to get the Friday match. We could get the Sunday. We weren't lucky to get the Friday match. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is not enough. You know, we'll see.
Tennis world #1 Rafa Nadal is stepping up his preparations ahead of the US Open. Nadal about to return to action at the Rogers Cup in Toronto. He's been taking a break since his semi-final defeat against Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon last month.
It's important to understand which moments you need to take a rest or which moments you need to work hard. No? And after a great run in clay and grass, I needed some period of time off, and that's what I did. Of course, now is the moment to work hard again and just try to be ready for the action here. And that's what I am doing these couple of days, working hard and just trying to be ready.
Now, the European Athletics Championships are underway in Berlin. There's a difference this time, though, as this is the first edition of what is now a multi-sport event. 7 existing championships are being staged under one new brand, athletics in Germany, and then the Scottish city of Glasgow is hosting aquatics, cycling, gymnastics, rowing, triathlon, and team golf. The event is set to take place every 4 years. Well, the athletics meet is lacking some star power. 4-time Olympic gold medalist Mo Farah deciding not to compete. 200 metres women's world champion Daphne Schippers is one of the biggest names in Germany, and organisers say they have sold more than 250,000 tickets across the 6 days of competition. Well, earlier on we spoke to journalist Stuart Weir, who's covering the event in Berlin. He says the sport is maintaining its popularity.
Well, of course, we are missing Mo Farah and Usain Bolt, but I'm really looking forward to this week's championship, and clearly the 250,000 ticket buyers are as well. You know, I think the people want excitement. They want races which are competitive. And, you know, that was the one disadvantage of Usain Bolt. He won all the time. If you look at the 100 metres, men and women, I really have no idea who's going to win, which I think is a great position to be in. And we do have our stars and our showmen like Renaud Lavallonnais, the pole vaulter, who can silence a stadium when he's competing. And, of course, that lasts for an hour, not just 10 seconds of Usain Bolt.
Justin Thomas is looking good ahead of the defence of his US PGA Championship title. The American has just won the WGC Invitational in Ohio by 4 strokes. A final day round of 69 took him to 15 under par, enough to clinch his first World Golf Championship event. 8-time winner Tiger Woods started the day 11 shots behind, and he carded at a 73, finished 15 strokes back. The final major of the year starts in Missouri on Thursday.
Yeah, I've been knocking at the door all year. You know, I came very close in Mexico and then again in match play. So I'd like to have some better finishes in the majors, but you know, this is as close as it gets in terms of that. So I'm very pleased with how well I've played these events in such great fields, and to kind of cap it off, you know, this year's WGC run with a win here in Akron going into the PGA feels nice.
Shohei Ohtani has continued his hot streak at the plate for the LA Angels. The Japanese player almost cleared the fence for a double in the first inning against the Cleveland Indians, but Jose Ramirez ensured it wouldn't be a winning day for the Angels with this 3-run homer. And there was a lot going on in the pit lane at Sunday's NASCAR.
Ini adalah siaran percubaan, dan seterusnya anda akan lihat satu channel berkait rapat dengan Masjidil Aqsa. paparannya lebih kurang macam ni. Dan kita akan cuba yang terbaik. Tapi gambar di sebelah saya ni sekarang bukan Masjidil Aqsa. Ia adalah gambar di Rom sekarang ni, gambar Rom. Dan saya akan tukar kepada Masjidil Aqsa sekarang. Yang itu Masjidil Aqsa. Tapi yang sebelah sini adalah dinding orang Yahudi sembahyang. Seolah-olah macam tidak bergerak. Masalah je. Tapi dalam keadaan sekarang sana masih sekarang masih malam lah. Dan insyaAllah tuan-tuan akan lihat video-video seumpama ini. Saya tidak pasti kenapa, tapi harap tak ada masalah. Sementara itu kita pergi ke Rom dulu. Tak apa. Kita akan pergi balik ke Kudus. Kita akan buat tu dia. Nampak tak? Ada pergerakan. Maksudnya sekarang tengah live. Gambar tu kecil. Saya belanja gambar besar. Gambar ni besar sikit. Ini sekarang di Kudus, Masjid Al-Aqsa. Itu dinding ratapan. Dinding ratapan. InsyaAllah sehingga berjumpa lagi, kita akan ikuti siaran yang akan disiarkan berkaitan Masjid Al-Aqsa dan Kota Lama. Tidak lama lagi. Sekian dahulu, siaran berakhir. Terima kasih menonton.